Well, with many kids across the country now back in school, advocates and parents of children with disabilities say they've been left behind since the beginning of the pandemic. COVID-19 has caused many educational resources to be cut or halted, and parents say their children are paying the price for it. We're joined now by two parents who are impacted directly by this issue. Tasha Butler has two sons with special needs and joins me now from Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia. And David Goodman has a son with Down syndrome. He's in Toronto tonight. Thank you both for being with us here on Canada Tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tasha, I want to
to
start with you, and I want to hear about your youngest son, Daxon. He is on the autism spectrum, and he was supposed to receive a year of therapy in a special program to help prepare him for school, but that changed because of the pandemic. Tell me about the therapy, what it would have helped him with, and what he ended up receiving.
So the EIBI program, or it's the Early Intensive Behavioral Program, intervention program, is designed to help increase communication skills, social skills, and increase their intellectual levels. So that's supposed to start a year before they start school to help them be able to integrate into the school life. But because of the pandemic and they had to shut down for 4 months, so that increased their backlog, which resulted in the program getting cut by half. So we're losing 6 months out of a program that's supposed to be a year long to help my son and a lot of other children out there to be able to communicate, to be able to either talk or to communicate with cards. And while they're learning that, they're also learning social skills, how to play with certain toys, how to interact with people.
Right.
They're learning, so it's really important program that because of COVID-19 is now getting cut in half.
Right. And the health minister argues that the program is still meeting the needs of families. Do you disagree with that?
I disagree 100%. The first 6 months of the program is the experts coming in and laying the foundation that the children need to be able to do the work, to be able to communicate someday. The first 6 months is just laying that foundation. The next 6 months is when they actually start to clue into the process and they start to gain that knowledge and, those skills that are needed for later on in life. So no, they're not meeting the goals with just the 6 months.
David, let me ask you, your son has a Down syndrome, and he was meant to be starting school in September, but that got pushed back because of the pandemic. You weren't able to get an EA. There was issues with the mask policy. Can you talk to us about what it's been like for your son in school?
Well, actually, we were able to get the EA, but it wasn't set up in the first month. The issue for us was that because of the pandemic, it was kind of an excuse for the supports not to be ready. The school knew about my son's condition in January. The school knew about his needs in January. And we provided all the documentation, this is January last year, we provided all the documentation that was necessary throughout the year. We had meetings with the school, and we had a final meeting like the Friday before school was going to start in September. And at that time, the school acted as if they never known that he needed, he was not toilet trained. And all of a sudden, we were in a position where they're not ready for us. And this was a classic situation of all the need, the pandemic is such a terrible situation for everyone, and the school hadn't prepared for my son.
Right.
And actually, it's not really the school, it's TDSB. And of course, there are all kinds of staffing shortages and all kinds of problems that occurred, which 100% understand and empathize with completely. But typically developing kids did not have their needs not met. They started school on time. My son didn't start school on time because of the ripple effects of the pandemic.
Right.
And sorry, I was going to address your question about the mask. The issue with the mask was that he TDSB had a policy about if there's a reasonable medical exemption, then a child should be allowed to not wear a mask in school. Now, my wife and I follow the social distancing and all the guidelines of the pandemic very strictly, and of course we want our son to wear a mask.
Right.
At that first meeting, we were told that he doesn't wear a mask, he can't come, and you need to have a letter. Actually, it wasn't in the policy that a letter was needed, but we got the letter within a day. But still, we had to wait a month to start school. So because of the delay, my son missed a month of school.
Wow. And I want to ask for both of you, you have accommodations that are needed for in-class learning, which needed to be addressed, but now we're dealing also with online learning. And so what has that transition been like, David, for online learning with your son?
It was terrible. It was absolutely a terrible experience for my son because he just doesn't connect to the screen. And it was so hard. We have another son, a younger son, 2.5, and I'm trying to work full time and taking him away in the room with me where I'm working. And my wife is trying to work with my son. And the other kids in the class were sort of left alone by their parents for the most part and just, could work on Zoom and hit mute and so forth. But my son needs 100% attention all the time. And he just didn't respond. And it was so stressful for him and so difficult for all of us and for my other son, and it was a terrible experience. It's not a fault of the school at all, but I think that kids with special needs were really considered.
So really no supports, no special kind of considerations?
No, there were supports. The EA was there, and she's an amazing EA, and we were so happy with the school. The school has done amazing work. Our beef is not with the school, it's with the system, it's with the TDSB and the Ford government for not providing the supports and not providing the tools that teachers need to support these kids. They have a accommodation, they're required to accommodate in the Ontario Human Rights Code. And the TDSB has an equity policy, equal equity for all children.
Right.
But kids with special needs were left behind. Of any students, they were the ones with the most needs, but they had the least involvement in the online education.
Tasha, you also have an older son who also has learning difficulties. What was the online experience for your family? Oh, I think I've lost your audio. Are you muted?
Oh,
there you got you now.
Can you hear me
now?
now?
Go ahead.
Okay. I haven't gotten any online supports at all. The only support that I was given was after I got to talk to the family doctor. The family doctor called the school, and then suddenly we were able to get speech therapy once a week for my older son who really needs it. But other than that, I have zero supports with homeschooling. I'm doing it all on my own.
I understand that you and your mother started a petition. What are you calling for, and have you gotten any response?
We want the EIBI program to go back to a full year. It's not, this 6 months isn't good enough. It's not going to help these children. It's giving them a taste of what could be, and then it's getting ripped away from them. So we want the government and the Minister of Health to sit there and, actually do the job that needs to be done for these kids. Find the people to hire that you need to for all the locations of the province, not just the big cities, but the rural areas where there are kids that really and truly need this program.
David, you're in Ontario. What would you like to see from the provincial government in terms of supporting children like your son?
Well, my son, more funding for children with special needs, more funding to have an EA, full-day EA. We're told that the TDSB doesn't typically give a full-day support as an EA or SNA for a student, and our response is, why not? How are you meeting the equitable education if you're not providing full-day support? It's not enough for us. It's just that's just an excuse. So they need more funding, and they need more awareness of really efforts that need to be done to include children in every way so we have equitable education.
What are you?
And for now, it's just platitudes as far as I'm concerned. It's just things they put on paper that look nice, but in actual real effect, you could take a look at my house during the last 2 months and you really see how well those policies are working.
I was going to ask, what do you hear from other parents who, Tasha, you've got you and your mom. David, I'm not sure, you've got some EAs as well, but what do you hear from other parents who maybe don't have a support system around them to help them navigate this, as you've essentially kind of been left on your own? David?
Well, I like to say that, we're talking about my son, but really I hope that I can say that I'm representing a lot of students, families with children with Down syndrome and other disabilities, because we have it pretty good, actually. Lots of families don't even have the EA that we have, or lots of families didn't have as much time we had in online learning as we did. So a lot of families are fighting all the time. We're part of a Down syndrome Facebook group, and we're sharing these stories all the time, and there are some really horrific examples of what the difference is between what's on paper and what actually happens. So I think that generally there has to be just much more attention in government. And in terms of, if I could just speak to the situation with therapy, like my son received therapy all the time when he was growing up, and in Turkey, we just moved to Canada recently. And now he doesn't have, obviously, in-person therapy because of COVID. But our argument is that this therapy is essential. These people who give these therapies should be on the top of the list for the vaccine, because these are essential services that need to be provided to these kids. Because years down the road, you don't want to be saying, I wish we had provided the support to these kids, because early intervention is everything with a child with disabilities. It can make a huge difference in their life every moment at this age.
All right, David Goodman in Toronto and Tasha Butler in Nova Scotia. Thank you both for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.